I've talked a lot on this channel about valid reasons to not be vegan, even in developed countries, how it can be hard, if not impossible, for some people to maintain a healthy vegan diet.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I have to ask my fellow vegans all the time, compared to any other social movement in the history of the world, who has suffered less?
Yes, rice and beans are very cheap, but you have to take into account the time it takes to prepare them, and even having the means to prepare them. Not everyone even has a kitchen.
It's easy to feel sorry for yourself. It's easy to feel that your sorrow and your suffering and your heartbreak is the most important thing in the world, that it blots everything else out. But when you compare veganism to any other struggle for social change, the emancipation of slaves, the civil rights movement, even struggles like trying to get, cancer labeling on cigarettes, trying to get seatbelts in every car, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, trying to change the culture of alcohol, the laws surrounding alcohol consumption and driving, trying to save lives. All of those social movements have involved suffering. I mean, the people involved had some kind of spirit of self-sacrifice and public service that is utterly lacking in digital veganism today.
Because being vegetarian accomplishes most of the good of being vegan and is substantially easier than being vegan, it makes sense for at least a portion of the population to stick with vegetarianism.
Compared to somebody in the civil rights movement, compared to somebody in any movement for social change, even for cultural change, even compared to artists, even compared to what actors in the live theater go through, or painters trying to do something new and innovative in their arts, those people suffer too.
Are there any valid reasons? Are there any good excuses for eating animal flesh? Yeah, I think there are.
See it in perspective. You think this is tough?
While this one isn't improbable at all for certain people living in developing countries who essentially have no access to non-meat nutrition, they need meat in their diets to be healthy and even to survive, it's pretty unrealistic for us, right? But not impossible.
I've done humanitarian work. I knew what it was like when I was in Laos. I woke up in the morning, I chopped firewood with an axe, and I boiled yellow lentils over the fire. And that was all I ate all day. Nothing, literally nothing but a vitamin pill, white rice, and yellow lentils. And, doing humanitarian work, I mean, it's not comfortable. But I don't feel sorry for myself. It was a wonderful opportunity. I look back at it and I feel glad that I had the opportunity to endure that. And I did a little bit to make the world a better place, even though I did suffer terribly. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but yeah, sure. But I mean, in Laos, I knew people who lived in caves. And they lived in caves because the U.S. Army was dropping bombs on their village. The U.S. Army was sending attack helicopters to shoot farmers dead in their fields. And I knew one woman, and she literally went through school that way. They set up a blackboard in the cave, and she studied her lessons with chalk and blackboard, literally in a cave in the mountains on the border between Laos and Vietnam. That was how she survived the war. There's a strange contrast for me in my life. I mean, I've got a quotation here from Liu Xiaoqi. I'm not going to read it out, I guess. But if you read this, any of this kind of literature from the historical struggles of communists, tremendous capacity for self-sacrifice, okay? And people who knew what it was like to live in really rough conditions for decades, because that was the struggle, okay? Living in a cave, what have you.
As long as the resources are going to waste, as long as meat and other animal products are going to waste, I don't see any reason not to use them.
I'm not a communist. I'm not a communist sympathizer. But I can still recognize in those people this sense of self-sacrifice, of dedication. And look, guys, we all just need to keep our suffering in perspective here. Whether you do that relative to the suffering of the animals, where you think, hey, yeah, you know what? Coming on YouTube and talking about my feelings is hard. It's really hard. It's hard. Okay? But you know what the pigs are going through every day during their whole lives on a concrete floor. a sow that gives birth on a concrete floor and has piglets sucking from her tits in the concrete floor, lives his whole life in a world constructed out of nothing but steel and concrete, until one day a human being comes along and slits their throat and they die. I mean, the death in many ways is not the worst part of this process, okay? The lives of these animals are constant suffering. They are born just to suffer and die, okay? Relative to that, all of us are going through nothing. But relative to the type of suffering that leaders and followers in every other political program have gone through.
Oh, and I have talked about the idea of just using that meat, even though it is going to waste, being kind of inherently immoral. I don't agree with that, and I have talked about that before too.
Absolutely no sense of an ethic of public service, of self-sacrifice. And I have to ask again, compared to any other social movement, who has suffered less? Dun, 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 dun.